So we can pull in.
That one. I'm sorry. Hang on just a second.
It is. That is exactly what's wrong. Things like this always happen.
I bet it's that microphone. You can't mute it. Just no, turn the iPad off. Hey Rick, just put that one back in front of her and just put. Here,
I bet it'll pick up from that table over there. Because it's picking me up this time.
I got it. I got it. I did.
I turned it down.
I took her off. Okay, sorry.
Try again.
We're wanting to do an evening parade.
There you go.
So we're wanting to do, instead of breakfast with Santa, we'll switch to like cookies and hot chocolate and coffee for the parents, and hopefully use the gazebo out front and have music at the courthouse as well. Really start the parade right about dusk, so the floats and the bands and things can decorate with lights. And I was talking with Chris Davis as well, because she's really wanted to get the businesses involved with decorating for Christmas, and I think this will really boost that. And so
I was going to ask if there was any chance we'd correlate with holiday open houses and things like that.
That's what I'm hoping to do, yeah. So yeah, just bringing lights into the Christmas parade instead of it. I think in the morning, it might be a little bit colder, but I think it'll be a good change, and a lot of people are very excited about it.
It's
so.
Christmas, of
It's
course.
Christmas, you need lights, right?
You guys had already approved everything for that day.
Yeah,
It's just changed the time. So
Okay.
because they were specific on their last request, I did
Yeah.
ask Kelly to come in and just get approval for that, for changing the time.
Yeah, just for changing the time. So I was thinking probably from 4 to 6:30, probably for the roast, and that'd be a good. I think that would
Yeah,
be
we've
a-
got it 3:30 to 6:45.
whatever.
Yep.
So yeah.
So I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board, I am now asking to move up number 1 under new business, approval of liquor license for Barefoot Grill.
Before we do that, on that
Yeah.
last 6:45, by that time the time has changed, it's gonna be lighter later or lighter, it's gonna be darker earlier, right? So are we still gonna be throwing candy and things like that? Because we've had children hurt on these things before, and now it's dark and we can't see them as well.
Yeah, we're just gonna get with the chief and talk about that, make sure we got some of the extra lights out there when it comes to stopping the traffic and things like that. And hopefully you'll be able to help us on that. So I think that's gonna be.
Because that would be the only concern.
We're thinking about that, but hopefully there's a lot of Christmas lights that are already out and that type of stuff, so there'll be plenty of lights. Yeah, we need to, figure it will be darker.
So now moving forward, new business number 1. Is that all right with the board? All right, and I believe we have owners here.
I'm Darren Decker, familiar with most of you, everybody knows Jorge. Jorge wants to see us and I have our opening, start being called a steakhouse, we're along the road, and I guess it's a steakhouse. People ask me all the time, is it like this or like that? Well, I really don't know of anything exactly that it's like, but we have went all out to try to find the best steaks we can find. I mean, we really have. When you see them, they're pretty impressive. They're expensive too. I mean, they really are. And I hope that, we have some stuff that is cheaper steaks, but I mean, they're just really nice steaks. We're hoping not just to have something that, people are thinking, well, we can eat this in Marshfield, so go Springfield. Hope people from Springfield come out here. I mean, we want to have some really good quality food. And it is a restaurant that has a few drinks and not a bar with food. We have an outside dining area that will have 7 or 8 tables out there when the weather permits. Y'all are welcome to stop by and see it anytime. We'll be there from this point on all the time. There'll be somebody there. If you guys want to stop and see, head in, walk through, check it out. We plan to open, we hope to open before Thanksgiving. It may not happen, but definitely before December 1st. We'll have a couple of nice and soft openings, so we don't just get hammered the first night we open. This is Arilla Butts, she's gonna be the manager. They're the pros of restaurants, I'm not. So, anybody got any questions? Glad to answer.
Okay. Do we have everything we need on your side? Yes, we do. All right. Any questions or comments from the board?
Do you have any pictures of the steaks?
No, but I'll tell you what, they got marbling, it's unreal. We hooked up the guy that gets grown right here in Webster County. I guess it's Webster County. Or Wright County, Webster County, real close to Webster County. I mean, he's on to something with this thing. They're just marble, unbelievable.
We've ate a few of them with that.
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't think that's quite the same.
All right, I am looking for a motion and second.
I make a motion.
That's second. it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, all right, we will return to number 2 under unfinished business. Sam, you want to talk about the leaf dump?
Yes. So, I apologize. I was gonna throw some pictures up there and I didn't have very many good pictures of the new site, but they did, all the estimation is done. The road is put in. So it is pretty well ready to put in, or pretty well ready for use. However, the rain has changed a few things. You know, we've got freshly excavated dirt out there. And so it's gonna change a little bit. We may have to put a little bit more aggregate down in order to get everybody in and out. But the site is ready. And so we've got a few operational issues to figure out. I currently have 2 applications sitting in there on my desk. I've got interviews set for one of those. I expect to have both of those interviewed by early next week. The sheet that I gave you, sheet that I just handed out to you, basically shows where we are, what we have expended. As we move on into next week and we start talking about the general fund, and as we start talking about budget, it's very important for you guys to understand and remember that these are fees and funds that we've never budgeted for before. This is a new service. The argument can be made that we've always accepted leaves, but we have never had to staff it. And so when we get into that, it's going to be important to remember that these are going to be ongoing fees in order to provide that service that we've never had before. So just want to point that out before we get to that next week. But what you'll see is up at the top, you'll see what we have invested into this in cash. The bid price, the bid that we received was the $17,385 while they were out there. Once they got the brush cleared off, there was some opportunity to make that site just a little bit bigger. And so I went ahead and approved a change order for $2,400 to make that site a little bit bigger. What I am asking for is if we're going to have a couple of people out there staffing that site, they're going to have some kind of cover. They're going to have some kind of somewhere to get in the rain and in a situation where it's cold or it's hot. And also, if we run into an issue where these are going to be part-time employees if we still want the site open, I can send some other employees out there to at least help cover the gap of that front gate verifying. And so if we put a small building out there that we can heat and cool and manage a little bit, then I can still send somebody with a mobile unit with their computer and with a hotspot. They can go out there. Problem is that there's no power to the site. We don't need power out there necessarily for the sludge farm, but we can power this off of a very small generator. So what I will be asking the board to consider tonight is to approve. We got multiple prices for some buildings. Still waiting on one to come back. The availability is the issue. Some of them are 6 to 8 weeks out. One of them that I'm still waiting on is about 3 weeks out. They thought they could turn one around. So what I'd be asking the board for would be up to $6,500 for a portable building. It's a little high for a portable building, but this is also an insulated portable building. It's also wired for a light and a couple of receptacles that will be powered by the generator. It'll also have an automatic switch, so you can basically just plug it into the generator. That way, whoever's out there, you can just quick connect it and go on. Obviously, I'll have to buy a generator for that as well. And then there's going to be an ongoing a dumpster fee out there as well. A lot of people bag those up and they put them in trash bags. If we don't have those, if we don't have somewhere for the trash bags, they're gonna end up in the leaf dump site. We've already fought that for years, or we're going to have to have our staff, whoever our part-time staff are out there, they're not going to have city vehicles, so they're not gonna have a way to transport that stuff. So we're gonna have to have something out there for those trash bags to go into. You will see that for the old location closure signage, those were the signs that we plastered everywhere down there that will remain to be up until we can kind of get that site cleaned up and start getting dirt on that. You will notice that we have been working on Prairie Lane, and as we start working on these other projects, as we can get rid of the asphalt, some of that dirt, once we get that site down to Fairgrounds kind of cleaned up and slicked off a little bit, we're going to start covering that old site up and start slicking that down so that we can hopefully next spring get some dirt and get some seed and straw on it, and maybe get some vegetation growing on it. What I've done on what Monica and I have done on this is I've tried to lay out and show the hours of operation and what the cost is to that. I'm totally open to suggestions, but I'll just run through with you what my methodology was behind trying to staff it. With current rate wages and trying to staff some open positions that we have had open and we still currently have open. I put in here $20 an hour per employee. Hopefully at that rate, we don't have a whole lot of turnover to where people are calling in and saying, hey, at the last minute, hey, I'm not going to be here. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to guarantee that we're going to pay that $20 an hour, but I wanted enough flexibility in there that we could go up to that amount to make it enticing for somebody to come and do. Again, I'm totally open to modifying that, but I truly feel like you're going to have to be somewhere around that number to make it appetizing for somebody to want to do that and want to come back every week. So if you look over on the right, I've missed the mark a little bit. I told you that I'd have it open by the end of October. We're close. We could still potentially be the first week of November if everything falls into place. But over on the top right, you'll see October 30th, 2021 through December 15th. Those weeks can extend if we see that we need to. My methodology was to have that thing open for 4 hours on Monday, 4 hours on Wednesday, and 6 hours on Saturday. Very flexible on the hours. What we do there's a happy medium there of trying to keep it open enough where people can use it and get there to use it, and having it open too much and it's open for nothing. We're paying staffing for nothing. So my thoughts were, and this is where I really like some feedback from the board, would be, I can't imagine that people are going to have them loaded up very first thing of the morning. So I thought, if we did something like a 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, it might get somebody, if they take off work early, or if they have the afternoon off, or if they get home from work, they might be able to have it loaded up and run it out there. But then on Saturday, I'm pretty flexible again. I think that, it's going to start getting dark very early. So I think that you're going to want it closed up by 5. We don't necessarily want our staff out there in the dark. And so, you're probably going to be looking at, 11 to 4 or 5, something like that. Again, I would really like some feedback from the board on that. But what Monica has put on here is kind of the reflection of that. So if you take those 2 employees at those hours up in that top portion, you're looking at, $3,900 plus there's some payroll taxes in there. So every time that we talk about this, you're talking about staffing with 2 people, because the road is so long, because the site's farther back off the road, and just for safety precautions of not having one person out there by themselves. There's going to be the portable building be up towards the front where they can keep the paperwork, where they can verify what they're coming to dump off, verifying that they are citizens, that they're not a contractor. But then there's also going to be somebody down at the site making sure they go where they're supposed to be, that they're not throwing their trash bags in there. And again, the safety aspect of it. So by the time you throw the payroll taxes in there and a little bit of work comp, you're looking at $20 an hour, you're looking at $23, $24 an hour. So every time, or I'm sorry, $43, $44 an hour. So every time that you add an hour, you just need to be made aware that we're adding $45 every time that we do that. So if you walk on down into 2022, kind of went through and I kind of tried to pick out some of the busier times. So mid-March to the end of May, I kind of I felt like we could probably drop that down into 4 hours midweek, which would be Wednesday, 4 hours on Saturday. You drop on into the summertime, basically the same thing. So that we don't have it open all year round. You'll see the dates in there. There's a little bit of gap in there. And then again, getting a little bit more aggressive coming into September through December for the big leaf portion. Totally up to you guys, what you guys want to add. Monica, I think, did a very good job of putting this spreadsheet together to where it's pretty simple to see. We can make adjustments tonight. I can bring that back to you. The reality is that we need to get it open now. So next year's doesn't necessarily have to be decided. However, if you guys have feedback, I need to know that so that I can kind of plan for that in the budget and you guys can see what that does to the budget for next year.
I like the 4, 4, and 6 for this year, and then the opportunity to reassess before we open again in March. See how it went. See what feedback we actually end up with.
I like that too.
I like the 10 to 4 on Saturday, like that's a time frame I could hit. The Monday and Wednesday I'm not coming to anyway, so somebody else probably needs to give input on it.
You said 1 to 5, that, 5 is getting really dark. What about just 12 to 4?
We could do that too. Again, that's why I just wanted some feedback from you all. I'm totally open to something, but when we start marketing this and start putting it out, I want to be able to hit the ground running with that. So, and even in my interviews, I need to be able to tell them, not to be there 15, 20, 30 minutes beforehand and 30 minutes afterhand, just to lock up and close everything up. So I kind of needed to work through that tonight before I can move that forward.
What's the person farther out there? Are they sitting in a truck or something?
That's the thing, right? And so this time of year, yes, that's now they can be up there towards the front, but we're talking, we don't have spare city vehicles for them to have out there to drive back and forth to the site. So there is a little bit of liability there for them using their own vehicles if they choose to move them back there. But yes, that person there is, unless we buy in another structure, they're probably going to, they're going to be sitting in their own vehicle. That's what I've got to talk to them in the interviews. Again, that's why we're kind of working through this. We don't have to buy the portable building. However, I truly think it's necessary. I think at least one of them is necessary. And if we see that this is a success and that it's very widely used, then I think maybe next year, then we may have to look at putting another one down there in the summertime, in the spring and summer, and even early fall. Probably not that big a deal. We could buy some shade structures. We'd buy those little pop-up tents, that everybody uses for their backyard barbecues. And I don't think that's a pretty inexpensive thing that we don't need to budget for. But when you start getting into cooler weather and wet weather and damp weather, I mean, yeah, I think we need to provide them somewhere to be.
Anything more than kite weather, and you have a kite, I mean, they just
Right.
ruined several of baseball games.
So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, really the big push is to make sure that you guys agree with the upfront for this year, moving forward through December 15th, and we can reevaluate, right? And we'll be able to look even just in town of how many leaves are still on the trees by December 15th. We may need to extend that on into closer to Christmas, and that's fine. But I had to give a range there of where I thought we might be, and then give a cost associated with that. So
This is not typical year.
it is not a typical year, and there'll be some. I will tell you, I said $6,500. I probably asked the board to approve more than that because of it not being a typical year, because of what we just came through, because of wanting to get it opened up. I will tell you, there's no steep banks or anything that for anybody to fall off into. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be difficult getting around. We didn't go in and build a full-blown subgrade road. We scraped off the top and then we put rock over the top of it. But down there around the site, I mean, it's going to be soft for days. And so I can tell you, if the intent and if it's the board's desire to get this thing open next week, we are going to have to go out there and put some big rock down closer to that excavation site, which is no big deal. It will help everything in the future. But I will need some additional funds to be able to do that. Our crews can do it. We won't contract that out, but it will take some money. So I'd probably be looking for with no intention to spend, I mean, I would need up to $8,000 or $10,000 for the portable building and for the extra aggregate.
Comments from the board? Start down the road. Stacy Lee,
I don't have a problem with doing that.
JC,
No, I'm fine with it, 'cause you don't want so much stuff for the first one out.
Robbie,
I'm good with that.
JC, or, sorry, John,
Say if we're gonna do it, let's do it right.
agreed.
So I've
Okay,
got 12 to 4 on the weekdays, 10 to 4 on Saturdays.
You don't want them out.
Sounds
there
good.
after dark.
We can talk about next year later. I don't see that June, August, September. Too many people use.
this is a good point. Do we need to get them in Hunter Orange, just? in
It is
case?
deer season, so we talked about that internally, and they will have to.
Yeah.
We will have to buy, there will be incidentals that we will have to buy because it is not in the city, it's in the county. And
They're
there
gonna
are
need
surrounding
radio communications there.
that we have radios for, them, but they will have to be decked out with Hunter Orange for sure.
So I am looking for a motion for city staff to spend up to an additional $10,000 for additional rock, a portable building, and generator.
I'll make that motion.
Is that right? All in
And-
favor?
And incidentals.
Okay,
Just make it work.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully if everything works out, no promises, but hopefully it'll be open by the weekend. Next weekend, not this weekend.
okay. Sam, North Elm Street expansion.
I was hoping to have just some good PR on this tonight. It's not bad PR tonight, but I was hoping to be able to say, yay, we made it and it's open. But the weather, we would have been, but the weather kind of put a kink in that. So they did come in and pave. They were able to actually backfill it much better than what I thought they were going to be able to. And so they have basically turned the road over to us to open it when we want to. There are a few things that we still have left to do. We still have to get a stop sign up down at the end of, at the north end there at the new CC. We're gonna also put a small curvature sign in as you're coming south. Then that road didn't call, it wasn't designed, I mean, it could be added, but in the design, it wasn't called out to be striped. But we are going to go ahead and paint stop bars at each end. And so weather permitting, we'll get that done. I was really hoping to have a ribbon cutting or something before tonight's meeting, but it just did not work out. So I really, there's only a few hours worth of work that has to be done out there. There's still some cleanup. So if you guys go out by there and you see it, Blevins is still on the hook to come and clean it up and do a little bit more edge treatment to it. There is one spot on the road, I'll just tell you, that is holding water right now, but it's very small. And it's because it is so muddy, they can't get it. It's, as you can imagine, there's only so much they can do with mud. It's not a lot of water, but that will not be there when they can get that grade off there. So they'll come back and do that. But really just gearing up, and hopefully we'll have some type of ribbon cutting and some kind of, here you go, Monday or Tuesday, I'm hoping. I've got everybody lined up. If MoDOT will come and get that stop sign installed, I've got the other contractors ready to come and paint it. And then MoDOT's inspectors really got to sign off on it. And then that's it. I mean, that one's ready to open. They are going to come in tomorrow and start milling on some of the other streets. So you will see some other activity from our pavers on the small milling. And then probably Monday, Tuesday, you'll see their big mill machine in here starting to work. And so hopefully by the end of next week, it'll all be paved and done. Contract said by October 30th. They obviously didn't make it, but the weather, they were set to be here and they were set to pave this week. Just part of it. So it's pretty typical for paving projects. And I'll tell you, they are pushing everywhere to get projects done. I mean, all across, not only Southwest Missouri, but all over Missouri, they are pushing. In fact, usually they don't move those big milling machines back and forth, but they will be driving it back and forth between here and Bolivar just to try to get some other jobs finished up. So they're trying.
Okay, any questions from board? All right, next item on the agenda is Grow Marshfield contract. we will open, we do not have any planned presentation today, so we will open the floor for discussion or motions, if you would have that. So I'll just go through the line. We'll start with Alderman Boggs.
I don't know, still thinking if, I'm not sure if we want to reduce that or not.
Okay, so still wanting some time to look through the rest of it.
I'd like to think about it, just maybe next time.
Okay, Alderman Quinn.
I've been doing a lot of thinking about this since our last discussion. I think it's too early to start pulling back. Just my personal opinion. And like, if we're gonna do it, let's do it all the way. And then there's gotta be some point. I agree that we have to have some return on investment. But this isn't something that just happens in a couple of years, I don't think. So, and that was a good report tonight, so.
Okay. Alderman Lee.
I'm with Robbie.
Okay, Alderman Cunningham. Okay, so we will table this. It'll appear on your next agenda and we'll just keep going through this till we get to where we need to get. Sound good? All right, so we will table number 4 and 5, put this in the new business. And the South Elm Street right-of-way vacation for Elm Street Heights. Steve, you want to present on that?
You should have they have a drawing in front of them showing, okay, on that right away, we have vacated that to help 2 areas. 1, help the developer straighten up his lots, and also 2, allow area for us to possibly put sidewalks in and have room for the utilities along there. So that's the reason why we did that. And it was because there was an angle there that didn't work well and it wasn't parallel to the actual street.
Okay, this is really a win-win when we went through it at planning and zoning. Are there any questions from the board? I'll go through here. Alderman Cunningham,
No.
Alderman Boggs.
My only question, which I'm sure you guys looked at, I think maybe Mel looked at, was the entrances onto Elm Street. Is that any concern at all?
So let's wait till the replat to get into that one.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Instead of the vacation.
Yeah, because this is different than
Okay.
that. Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Alderman Quinn,
Nope.
Alderman Lee. Nope. All right, I'll read the bill. Bill number 2021-37, an ordinance vacating a portion of South Elm Street right of way.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Quinn.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
Second reading, bill number 2021-37, an ordinance vacating a portion of South Elm Street right of way.
Move to
Second.
Roll call, please. Quinn.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
All right, South Elm Street replat. Steve?
Okay, so this was a replat. Previously, the owner had brought to us 11, well, actually 5 lots, and they were very long and narrow lots. Came back and presented 11 in this replat, but also showed planning and zoning what their idea of development behind that was, and that is to have a total of 51 lots. And Planning and Zoning Commission was in agreement with the way they had it set up. It looked good. The one item that was still in question was the detention. For the drives, it was recommended that they have turnarounds, and the developer agreed to have those. It was asked if he was going to put in sidewalks. He said he was considering it. Okay, so we voted to send it to the Board of Aldermen with the condition that, 1, he have the detention done before the permit is given for the first lot to build on, or 2, he provide the calculations that will be approved by our engineers for either the 11 lots, which is what he would have to do, or possibly all 51, so he would never have to come back and do any detention. But that would have to be done, and we would have to have those calculations so that we would know how big of an area would need to be done, so that we can put a price together so that he could provide a surety bond to have it built. So there's some steps there that have to be done before the first permit can be given for the first lot. Okay, but we recommended approval of it with the condition of the detention. Any questions?
Open the floor. Alderman Quinn?
Why wouldn't we just wait for the approval till after the detention calculations?
You can do that.
Well, I mean, is there something gained by doing it contingent?
The surety bond gives us a protection, so it lets them go forward with their process without us holding them up. So if they choose not to put it in, right, then they have to go through the work of getting all the calculations together and put a price tag on it, and then get basically an insurance policy that names us as the guarantor. And if they don't do what they said they do, we cash it in, put it in ourselves.
So if you guys were to approve it, the other reason, if you guys were to approve it tonight, then that basically, they're buildable lots now. They're split up, they're buildable lots. And so if they really wanted to, they could go in there next week and they could do all their work. They could provide us the stormwater calculations. We'd get those verified, and then, I mean, they could get going on it if they wanted to. Saying that we could get everything in place to where if they had to wait, I mean, now we're next November or what. So now it's on their timetable. It's on them. The city's not stopping them from doing anything. But you can absolutely not approve it until they get that done.
And it's a good question. Because it's one I had to ask. Alderman Lee?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Alderman Cunningham?
Fine.
Alderman Bog?
So I was on the turnarounds, they are putting those in. That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, 11 driveways on that.
And
I was just wondering, like,
and they did agree to put them all on the high side, on
Yes.
one side, so that you didn't have joint.
Right.
okay.
So you didn't, you know what I'm saying? So you didn't have
Yeah.
a double driveway. So you didn't have this person fighting for traffic in and out at the same time. So that they won't be shared driveways, basically.
Right.
They'll all be on, which makes sense as from the building side anyway, because you're gonna put your garage on the high side anyway.
All right. I'll read the bill. Bill number 2021-38, an ordinance approving the final plat of the replat of South Elm Heights Phase 1, City of Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Are we doing that contingent on?
With the contingent that they do the detention.
Clarification of the motion. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, just making sure.
Yeah, good question.
Quinn.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Second reading, bill number 2021-38, an ordinance approving the final plat of the replat of South Elm Heights Phase 1, City of Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri.
Move for approval.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Quinn.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
All right. Steve, you're up again.
Okay. The other item that we have is just for informational purposes only, and that was the preliminary plat for the Pine Ridge subdivision. And this is off of Pine Ridge, it's between Smith and Banning. And it is a piece of property right now that is vacant, has been vacant for some time. And it is adjacent to the, are they called Church Hill?
Apartments.
Okay, and so it is the same developer who is looking to do this, and they will be adding additional buildings similar to what they've got now, and then also have lots for single-family homes. And this is an R3. So because of that, we can allow them smaller lot sizes because it's an R3. And so they are taking advantage of that so that they can have more lots, more houses, and fill in that whole area. And then they have designated one lot for nothing but detention. So they will take care of detention for the whole area.
And the code, and there's no action required. for this, but the code does say that it will be approved by, the preliminary plat will be approved by the planning and zoning and then kicked over to the Board of Aldermen for your guys' review. So that's what this is for. So if you guys have comments or concerns or questions, that's what this would be for, but there is no action for you guys. The preliminary plat does not authorize them to do anything, but it basically says that the city does not disagree with what they're wanting to do to the project.
This is the same entity that requested our support on their accessing state funds. So we've all received a letter from this developer as well. So they are moving forward and trying to do the best they can with that property, and
They are on the
Forward
meeting
working.
if you have any questions for them.
How
And
many
you also,
more?
you also have a site plan in your packet.
How many more units will this new property add? To what?
Kayla, are you able to tell us how many units in total?
52. They will have a total of 52 new units.
Single
Not
family
19 homes. There's
19 homes plus.
plus
Plus.
the other.
there's Apartments. up there.
Yes,
Yeah.
so 52 units with the apartments. And then there's the 19 lots, and then they've got one lot that will serve as a clubhouse, playground, and a pool.
Well, they take good care of their stuff.
They do. We
know that they take good care of
we have never had an issue with the developer requesting this. They do build a very pretty building. They do take very good care of it.
I'll go through the line real quick. Alderman Lee, any questions or comments?
Absolutely not.
JC? Alderman Boggs?
Nope.
Alderman Quinn?
Nope.
All right. We will move on to the next item, which is the TEAP grant. Sam, no, who wants to?
So I think we can make this pretty quick. So if you guys will remember that I came to you asking if we could, Mel and I came asking if we wanted to apply for the TEAP grant. We were awarded a TEAP grant last year for that intersection over Elm and South Elm and Jackson Street for that intersection, along with DD and Elm for that realignment. Very good process that we went through. Got really good information back from that. Was able to pass that along to SIMCOG and in our selection process for prioritization. It helped, and so it was a good process. In this, so this year, they actually increased the amount for the TEAP. And so we were able to, we were looking at doing a traffic study, a speed study. And then also we had been in discussion and a citizen had asked us about, and we had discussion about stop signs and four-way stops, not only at Elm and Hubble, but at Pine and Hubble and Marshall and Hubble. And so the board agreed to kick in some extra funds on that if we wanted to do that. And so we put that in all in an application. We were awarded the grant. So same process as last year, basically. So we could either go out and we could do RFQs for our engineering services, or you can select from MoDOT's pre-qualified list. Great River is on that pre-qualified list. What I'm asking for tonight is for you all to select Great River from that pre-qualified list, and then basically vote to authorize to sign a consultant letter that will go on to MoDOT. That's not the final steps. This will come back to you probably in the next meeting. If not, it'll be beginning of December, and you guys will have to actually pass an ordinance authorizing that to finalize that agreement. And then, do you remember what the timeline is? It's pretty quick. It's early next year.
Yeah, notice to proceed on January 31st, and then we have to have it all finished by the end of May.
So it's not a very long process, and so it'll be really good information. And again, we couldn't do any of the work that we were wanting to do until we have traffic numbers for Elm Street. So it's really perfect timing that we just got awarded to this. We're gonna open it up. Now we can take traffic counts, and I think that Great Rivers have got some new toys, I think, from talking to Shannon, that they can really help with that. And so I think it's really good timing. So I would recommend selecting Great River from the pre-qualified list and asking you all to vote to authorize the mayor or I to sign the consultant letter.
What was the total value of the award?
19.5.
12,000 grant, 7,565.
And then we'll be reimbursed 9,000. Is it 12,000? I thought it was 9,000. Is it 12,000?
What is
Is
it?
that right? The reimbursement.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
we'll run through
Okay.
line real quick. Alderman Cunningham, any questions?
No.
Alderman Boggs?
Nope.
Alderman Quinn?
Nope.
Alderman Lee?
Nope.
Okay, I am looking for a motion and a second to approve Great River Engineer as the engineer selected from the MoDOT pre-qualified list and permission for Sam or myself to sign the consultant letter.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right. We are at wage survey results. So I have the item that is in your packet, your bound packet, you can put a great big old X through that because it's not right. And I learned that today as I was going through trying to make sure my numbers were right, that I took some numbers out of this column and some numbers out of that column, and that just didn't work. So the ones that you have on the table are the correct copy. And if you would please, I know they look very, very similar. So if you look at where the stars are, the copy that has more stars that are in the white and not the green, write current at the top of that. And then the other one, you can put 3.7%. And that'll make a whole lot more sense here in a minute. But you'll be able to tell the difference between the two as we get going on this, because like Stacy said, it looks like Skittles. So the methodology behind this, and the city has looked at paying to have wage studies done. This has been an ongoing issue for many, many years. But we were able to access a wage survey that was completed by the Municipal League this year. And so what they do is they send out a survey to all their constituents and say, hey, give me all this information. And they put it in a great big Excel spreadsheet, and then they make it available to all their members. So what I did was I took that for every position that we have here at the city that was similar. And I filtered out two ways. One, I only captured fourth class cities because we are a fourth class city. And two, I narrowed population between 5 and 10,000 people because we are right in the middle of there. Now, what needs to be said is I did not filter by budget. So we generally run, Monica, an 8 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Several of these cities that are included in this run a $40 and $50 million budget. So is it apples to apples? No, but if I quantified that any further, I didn't have enough results to really do an analysis. So I took that information, I filtered it by classification of city and population, and then using that information, I did averages and built a range of what each salary would fall in based upon that particular analysis. And so using that, look at the one that you have that says current. So if you look over where it says step system, we currently have a step system, which means when you're hired in at step whatever it is. And as you progress through, you change your step until you've been here enough years to top out at 7, and then, well, you're stuck, right? And so that's that glass ceiling that we've been talking about trying to eliminate. My thoughts on how we can eliminate this proverbial glass ceiling here is that we stop doing a step system and we attach a pay range to each one of our positions. So if I have all the positions kind of listed here, I am going to tell you there are positions here that we don't have. So I will get into those specifically here in a minute, but in the middle is your positions, and the next column over is the determined pay ranges based upon the analysis that I did. What I tried to do from there is see where did we fall in comparison to that pay range. So all of those stars that you see that don't reach the green, we are below. The lowest, the minimum that I found within the pay ranges of our comparable cities. You will also note there's two that are in the red, one that's past the red. So there is one bit of information that this does not give me. It doesn't really tell me what that particular position does. It is everybody who has a similar job description. So city collector and deputy collector are the two that were a complete anomaly. And I do not know what their job description is versus our job requirements for those offices. So I really do feel like they are an anomaly. But that's where they landed. So I didn't try to change it. That's just kind of what this analysis found. So as you look through this, if you look into utilities, this is a good area to discuss the fact that we don't actually have all of these positions. In fact, we don't have a crew 1, 2, and 3. So by taking a position where it's just a member of the crew and providing some variance between levels, some it's all the same job responsibility, but it's range of capability between a 1 and a 2 and a 3. That helps us separate some of the compression that happens with our employees over time. So currently we do not have a 1, 2, or 3, but by adopting a 1, 2, or 3, it gives new employees the ability to move, to be promoted to new positions as their supervisors feel they have earned that. And it also broadens the amount of pay range before they reach a supervisory level. You'll also see that split in the street cemetery. So if you'll take that and you go to the other page where we have a whole lot more stars that actually make it into the Skittles. What I did here was, as you know, the budgets are all based on a 3.7% raise. And just to reiterate, in order to come up with 3.7%, what I did was compared CPI for the last 5 years to the raises that we actually gave our employees. And the difference between those, the just keeping up with CPI that we had not offered our employees as of June was 3.7%. So that's where that particular number came from. By giving them the 3.7% raise, here's where we fall. Now, there are some that are outside the line, and I can tell you how much it takes to get to the line. There are some, you're going to notice police chief is like on the line. That's because literally he's like $5 over the line. So that's where that one is. You'll also notice that the employees that are closer to midpoint are likely that they're newer employees. Most of those are newer employees. The largest jump that you are going to notice is Parks Director. That is because the Parks Board has actually separately met and discussed an increase for their Parks Director and approved that action. And so that is calculated into that with the 3.7. And that's the reason that position moves from one side of the spectrum clear to the other side of the spectrum.
What's the patrolman one with the line?
It's because they're not all paid the same amount.
Oh,
So it's between here and here. There are 10 individuals that fall within that span. We will soon have 2 corporals. There is a promotion taking place soon. We did interviews this week. The goal being to eventually end up with supervision for every, not just squad, but for every shift. I think we need 1 more for that, don't we?
We need 1 corporal. We have 2 squads. We have 1 squad that doesn't have any supervision on it. So we're putting supervision on one, so both squads have a corporal.
Okay. So we can kind of run through this if you have any questions. There isn't really any action to take because it's a lot of information to stare at, in all honesty. But Alderman Box?
I don't have any questions. Looks good.
Okay. Alderman Quinn? Alderman Lee?
So this 3.7 is in the budget.
That you're
that we're
already reviewing.
looking at.
Yeah.
How much room, ballparkish, do we have to fix some of these that are just $5 over the line?
Just to get everybody to where they're $5 over the line will be an additional. Make sure I get this right here. $27,000. And that's just those that are outside the line to the line.
What's it cost us to get every star to the edge of midpoint?
Ooh, I have not calculated that, but I'd be happy to.
I'd like to know what to get us to here costs this, to get us. I mean, this is great information, but we're gonna keep people, get good quality new people. We need to know what that's gonna cost.
I can do that.
Because we're not just competing with 4 or 5 cities.
Right.
Unfortunately.
We're not.
If it's,
We're competing with CU, MoDOT. And a few 4th class cities.
but I'd like to know. I mean, I figure orange and red Skittles is out of our shop right now,
But could we get to blue and
can we get
yellow
blue
at a
and
minimum?
yellow?
Okay. Yeah, I can calculate that.
I'd like to see that.
Okay, Alderman Cunningham?
I'm good with that.
Okay. I'm actually going to write blue and yellow Skittles and we'll see if I can remember that. All right.
Skittles.
Next is the 2022 Transportation Fund Budget Presentation. Ma'am, Monica?
In your packet, you got a couple different sheets in here for transportation. You've got the transportation fund and you've got the transportation capital project fund. We'll start with the transportation fund. You'll notice, notice at the top, just run through the cash balances real quick. You'll notice that if you go to the budget 2022 current operating, you'll see that after expenditures for 2022, the way that we have it budgeted, you'll see that we're budgeting for a cash balance of $725,026. You'll see, if you drop down into the revenues, you'll see the sales tax, exactly what Monica was saying earlier, budgeted for basically just a flat carryover straight across from 2021 budget for the 775,511. Interest is down just a little bit. I say a little bit, interest is down just because of interest is down. You will see that grant reimbursement that we were talking about will go from the TEEP. You will see it will get on down into the expenditures, but there is a $19,500 expenditure. This is the reimbursement that we will receive from MoDOT. You will see that we are budgeting to spend into that or to spend into the deficit of that balance by $153,708. Any questions on the revenues for the transportation fund? On the expenditures, you will see that there are some, and I'll be glad to point out anything, talk about anything you want to, but I'm just gonna hit the kind of the changes that you see from last year into this year. You will see there are some, there's $10,000 set aside there for engineering. We do have several projects going on. We do have several things that we're working on the transportation side that are going to take several small reviews and small work orders that, for instance, I approved one just today for a site visibility issue that we're working on with a developer for driveway placement. Outside of staff expertise and outside of our knowledge of what can and can't be done. And so we've been listed with our transportation engineer to do that. Again, that one there was $800. So they're nominal fees, but they're still.
Is that part of the ordinance that allows the pass-through of
It
those
could,
engineering
it could,
costs?
They could. Yep.
So should we be recouping, or does
You
it depend
could-
on the
you could-
development?
You could, but a lot of this is what we're doing internally.
Mm.
A lot of this is small jobs that our staff can do, but there's gonna be certain things that we don't know exactly how something has to be designed. That if we're redoing, like, for instance, on Marshall Street, when we widened that, we had to get Great River involved a little bit because there are certain things that you have to do on radiuses and certain things that you have to be able to account for. There's several little jobs figured into that. I can't tell you exactly what they are, not because it's top secret, but because it's just stuff that we have in queue, that things that pop up through the year. That number, we could take that down to 5,000. We could take that number down to 0, and I could just bring those back to you as they come up. But when we have a $1,000 issue come up that our crews could go ahead and do and something pop up, I would rather be able just to go ahead and move forward and do it and take care of it.
That makes sense.
So that's what those funds are there for. Signs and paint. So you'll see in this budget that you have before you tonight, and I changed this a little bit today. That $13,000 is in there, which you will continue to see it to be in there kind of in perpetuity. You've never seen it before, but that is, we have taken over Hubble Drive, the old CC. It is the only road in town that is painted all the way through. And so it's got center stripes and it's got the fog lines on each side. That is now ours. If we want to continue to paint it, which there's an expectation for it to be painted and it needs to be painted, we will have to pay to paint it now. So we actually took over ownership of it from Rifle Range Road all the way to Summer Fresher, all the way to Price Cutter. So that is our road now. We got a price this year. We got an estimate for to paint that, and it's $13,000 from the contractor. We can't do that in-house. But what I will say is that unless you guys disapprove, I think one thing that Melanie will be looking at in that study will be whether or not we want to stripe Elm Street. So what I'm proposing is to put an extra $5,000 in that. So instead of $13,000, but move that to $18,000, that should give you the option to stripe that if you want to. Does it have to be in the budget? No. Can we amend that or just add it next year and you guys just approve it as an expenditure? Yes, but if we want a true reflection of what I feel like is going to be asked, and when we start looking at that, I think you guys are going to be asked to put a center stripe down it. Their study may even show that it's warranted that we need to. I don't know that yet, but if we want to budget on the safe side, I would say that we would probably want to increase that to 18,000.
What about painting the roads up to? So since we own it now, like pine, elm, everything.
So we've always had the option to do that. We can paint our roads. We've actually had the option to do that. In the street department, which we can move it over to the transportation department, it is totally allowable. You know, it is a restricted fund that is restricted to transportation, which that is an allowable use. There is a growth area in the street department for additional striping. We could take that out of that fund, which is a direct draw and impact to the general fund, and move that over to the transportation fund, which is allowed, which would allow us to be more aggressive. And that's what that growth area is in there for, is to be more aggressive with our street painting. So Banning, back before the improvement, Banning was always striped down towards down at the intersection by the bank. Jefferson Street, where it meets Hubble Drive, it was always striped. Pine Street was actually always striped. Elm Street was always striped. So if we want to, if that's something that the board desires to have in there, we can take those monies from that we had in this growth area from the street department, which again is the general fund, and move those into the transportation department if you want to.
I
Something
think
needs to be
that's
done by them, because, I mean, you can see how people, they don't spend their money, they just write out in their budget.
I do not disagree. And I think, and so we're getting ready to pave Banning, which will improve that just a little bit. And so at where Banning hits Spur Drive, I think we're gonna want some striping too. So if you want to put again, anytime we start something new, it's gonna be a educated guess, but if you wanted to put another $10,000 in there, then we could put that in there and we could do that next year. And we could be more aggressive with that and we could see what that actual cost comes in as next year, and then that could carry forward. Some of these, some of this money, whenever all the dust settles from, and I'll get on into this here in a minute, but when the dust settles from some of these other projects, we're going to have surplus funds in this fund. This year, you'll see that we're spending, we'll get into it in a minute, but Marshall Street's $300,000. Well, that still only puts us $150,000 in spending into the deficit. So we're going to have some money in there. And so if we want to tie up some of that with routine maintenance, such as striping and this and that, then I think that's a very, very qualified expense for that. I think it's a very good way to spend our money, and people will see it and people will hopefully use it.
Right.
I think it'd definitely be appreciated. It is most certainly a qualified expense for this restricted
Absolutely.
fund. So I think my opinion is that all the striping should be in one spot unless there's a reason to start splitting it out. Just makes it easier to me to figure out the budget.
We've just been very, from a staff level, we've been very, very careful and very protective of this fund until this point, because we didn't know what the exact costs were going to be, and we didn't know what our debt service was going to be.
On those
So-
major projects.
So now we have a little bit better feeling of where we're going to be in that. And so I don't disagree with that. So, we were going to move that to, that other fund to, or that other line item to 18,000 from a staff's recommendation. I mean, if you wanted to move that to whatever you want, if you wanted to move that to $28,000 or $30,000 and
What is the amount that's in the general fund for it?
I'd have to go back and look what the growth area, I want to say $7,500.
Could we just advise combining? Plus the five?
Well, maybe when you look at the general, as a growth area, $7,500 in the growth
Okay.
area. But now there is a line item we could combine them. There's a regular line item
And a growth area.
So I would hesitate on moving that because it's signs and paint.
Okay.
I will tell you the majority of that has been signs, but I will also say that when we paint our crosswalks, that's where that comes from, is out of that. So if we want to move all of that over into the striping, we can work on that and pull that over if you want to.
Board members?
It would be good to have it from the same place, I think, just one. Is that what you're saying? One location?
Yeah, to take all of that expense out of one fund that
Easier to track.
can support it.
And again, this is just a presentation. We're not asking you to approve or adopt anything tonight.
Right.
So we can absolutely move that stuff around. And so we'll take a look at that. We'll
Okay.
move those things, we'll move that stuff around. And then we'll won't be done we'll probably send out the other budgets the way that they're set, because we're getting ready to send those out anyway, if they haven't been sent already. But then we'll bring you, kind of like this, we'll bring you an updated copy to the work session next Thursday.
And do we also want them to consider adding striping or at least stop bars at the cross streets on Hubble? So the elm and the pine and the,
So I think what
To
we'll
add stop
do,
bars.
so the additional 7,500, some of that was figured into that.
okay,
So what we'll probably do is we'll probably increase that just a little bit. And so probably what I will be looking at is adding an additional $10,000 for additional striping. It's a little bit of a stab in the dark, but again, it's going to be hard to get those numbers without going out to bid for that.
Yeah.
And just so you all know, we used to have our own paint machine that we could do that we could do those turn signals, small striping that we could actually do the square with for parking spaces. Those machines are very expensive. We bought it new a couple of years after I started, and it had a good run. It really did have a good run, but it is no more. So that is something that we could look at even purchasing for our crews to do. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to do, but it would not be a solution for Elm Street, Hubble. Those are gonna have to be done with trucks. We painted Banning a few times, and if there's a pebble in the road with one of those regular paint machines, you see it. And it's a good opportunity to go, yeah, that looks like something the city did. So I would urge just from an appearance thing for us to not go down that route. But we could go back and we could buy another paint machine, but I will tell you, they're gonna be somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for even the hand machines. But when you look at it in long terms and perpetuity, I mean, we pay $1,500 or so to have all of our crosswalks painted.
What
each
is
time.
the maintenance? Like, is this something that you have to do every year, or is
Yeah.
this okay?
Yeah, it's an every year.
So all of these have to be done every year anyway. It might be worthwhile for our department to figure out.
In the long
What I was
run,
gonna ask you is, when does the amount of painting that we're doing make it worthwhile for us to do it in-house?
with what you guys are adding now, with what you guys are talking about and wanting to add, which I totally agree with and I'm on board with, it would be now. If we get past some of these major projects that we've been working on, I mean, I can't brag on our crews enough, but I don't know that anybody really understands the extent of what our crews have typically always done in the past and what they have done over the last 2 or 3 years. It hasn't been a typical 2 or 3 years. I mean, what they've been doing has been major road improvements. I mean, Banning and Prairie Lane, that is not typical road improvement. That is typically stuff that we would contract out and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. The square, major projects that most cities won't tear off and do internally, and we have, and financially, I'm glad that we have, but from a workload, I am not. So,
Okay.
but where we are at now, I think now would be the appropriate time to budget either enough money to contract it out, or you might see that we can buy the equipment to do that. for
Or
about the
some
same price.
combination of
Yep.
the two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Big
if
step
you might
in
look
there.
into that.
Yep, I will.
Takes us into Prairie Lane and
Yeah,
Marshall.
so you get on down in here, so Prairie Lane, again, I think that we'll spend all of the 50 from this year. The guys are out there now, obviously. I think that we'll spend all of the 50, if not a little bit more. We'll get into a couple of places where there's not going to be a stopping point. And so I can't tell you exactly where we'll land, but they just started on that in the last week or two. So I can't even tell you exactly where we're at right now. But I do think we'll spend all of that. But I will tell you that it is deteriorating as quick as what we put it together. And so this is probably going to be an ongoing thing year by year that we'll have to evaluate, but we could spend another 50 out there very, very quickly next year. So really feel like that needs to be in there.
We're just gonna live on South Prairie Lane.
Do what?
We're just gonna live on Prairie Lane. is what you're saying.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, unfortunately, but hopefully we can get the worst places fixed and then Crackfield, and hopefully it'll really slow it down. But it is a challenge for sure. You will see that North Marshall from Hillsborough to the interchange is in there, from basically where they left off the new interchange. That is, we did bid that out as an alternate. So we took that bid, we added 10% to that, hoping that catches it. I feel like that's a pretty realistic number. I do feel like that road needs to be done. It is important for you guys to understand too, that is not widening the road. It is just resurfacing the road. If you want to talk about widening the road, it's a much, much larger project. Probably at least triple that. Fair enough. That does not include, we did not include the box culvert at the bottom. Again, I've looked at it multiple times. It would be a nice addition, but it would not add really to the functionality of the road. And so at some point we will have to do that. But it really doesn't, we're not really throwing money away by doing this. I mean, we'd be tearing up a section. We would cut that out and we would probably be tearing out a section 30 feet wide and putting it back. So I just don't feel like I don't feel like we're at a point where we have to do that yet. And that came with a price tag of like $125,000. I think we could inject that into some other roads that need it now, probably in 2023. You'll see that the replace the existing patches. Obviously, as I just kind of stated, our crews have been very busy. You guys had approved to spend those funds this year. We were able to do a few of those, but not very many. So you'll see that some of those were even taken out of just regular maintenance. That's why the estimated actual is nothing. So I'm asking for that to be kind of a pass through and just a carryover into this next year. Along with the sidewalk replacement, we are working with some contractors to hopefully get a bid price like per foot, so that we don't have to basically go out and say, we want you to do this section. We're trying to get it nailed down to where they would give us a price per foot for tear out and replacement, and then the seating and strawing all in one thing, so we can kind of go out there and do it per linear foot. I do think that we'll make some ground on that over this winter and over January, February. And then obviously you've got the transfer to the debt service. Now I will tell you that the board had approved $45,000 for the crack filling material. Because we've been so busy, we have not been able to do any crack filling this year. Therefore, I did not buy the material. It's readily available. However, we do have to store it outside. It comes on pallets, not that the material can be damaged, but it comes in cardboard boxes. So obviously the longer you leave it out there, the rubber inside of it it's not a big deal to that, but it does make a mess out of the outside of it. I'm asking that you guys move that over, just carry that over into next year as well. I just didn't want to buy it and it just sit out there.
Okay.
So a couple of things to point out before we move on to the next one. I'll get the easy one out of the way first. On the I-44 roundabout, Elm and Banning contingency. So that number is still in limbo. I had a conversation with MoDOT even today that they are closing those projects out. However, we're expecting a credit on the roundabout down at CC and Banning. I have no idea what we're expecting on the administration fees on the interchange. I've asked several times, Mel has asked several times. I don't know where we're at with MoDOT. And so there is $300,000 contingency in there. Hopefully we'll come out smelling like roses on that. Will be great. And if we are, I mean, in a perfect world, 300,000 of that would be added to your cash balance for next year. In a not so perfect world, we would eat into a little bit more of that cash. I don't know, and there's no way for me to tell you that until MoDOT comes to the table with that. I do have an email into the financial person at MoDOT, Frank Miller. Hopefully we can get together next week now that they have turned in all their final paperwork, but I will let you know when I know. So I just wanted to let you know that there is some money there that is in flux just a little bit. The other one to pay attention to is that $208,342. We'll get into that just a little bit on this project fund that we're getting ready to get into. So let's just go ahead and get into the capital project fund, and then I'll just remember that $200,000 number. This transportation capital project fund is the $10 million that we had for the project. This is the money that I had talked to you guys about, which is allowing us to pave Elm Street, and which is allowing us to do Banning without dipping everything out of the transportation fund. So we did very well through the construction phase of that. We hit everything at a really good time with the fuel prices and everything, the asphalt prices. So we actually came out of that smelling like roses on that end, and we were able to come out with approximately 1.2 million of funds to do other transportation projects with. That money either has to be spent or it has to go back towards the principal. Our bond counsel and financial advisors said spend the money because of the interest rates, because of where we're at with everything, because of the bonding. If you have transportation projects that you need to do, spend the money. So that's whenever I came to the board at the time, said, hey, I think we're gonna be able to do this, do Elm Street and some other projects. So those projects are they're estimated to be over the 1.2, around 1.3 million. What's important to remember though, is that from everything that we've seen, we did pretty well on Elm Street as well. We're pretty well where we thought we would be on quantities. We are going to, we did pretty well on, there was around $80,000 in there for subgrade repair if we got into some soft spots in there. They didn't hit anything on that. We had no subgrade repair on that. So we're hoping for a full deduction of that. We did deduct the portion out for the curbing. We also, there's $15,000 in there that for edge treatment along Banning Street, that they were basically going to come in with a skid steer and basically make a mess. And so I had them take that out. And I think I've got another avenue for us to rent a piece of equipment that I'll be coming back to you guys at a certain time to talk about that. So we took that out. But the big kicker in that is there's $200,000+ for that trail that goes from Hubble all the way to the new trail along CC that they're coming back in May to do. That's where that fluctuation comes in. We're going to spend all of this money first. I talked to our bond counsel today. Monica and I had a phone call with them today. They're totally, we had to spend 85% of those funds within the first 3 years. We're totally beyond that, but we're going to spend these funds first, and then we're going to pull the rest of that out of transportation. Depending on where we land with MoDOT, that $300,000 number, and depending on where we land after we get done with Banning, that will depend on whether we spend all of this and spend more transportation dollars, or whether or not we just spend all of this. Does that make sense? So there's some stuff in flux that I can't give you the numbers because I don't have them yet.
Yep.
Does that make sense? This fund, the intent is for this fund to go away. Just to
The
spend it all.
capital project fund should
Yes.
not have a 2022 budget.
Right. And Gilmore and Bell said that they were totally fine. If that took us till May, then they were not concerned about that at all.
Okay. Any questions on transportation? We'll run through the list real quick. Alderman Quinn,
No.
Alderman Lee,
No,
Alderman Cunningham.
No.
Alderman Box.
Nope.
All right. GO bond debt service fund is fairly self-explanatory. It is a debt service fund. Any questions from the group? The GO bond is the I-44, the big interchange project. For some reason, I couldn't figure out the name of the road, sorry.
Monica's done a good job. You see at the bottom, we owe 9.2 million on that at the end of 2022. So that's why you also see the transfer out of the transportation fund. Make
All right, that'll take us into cemetery fund. You have a replacement sheet. Please look at it, not the one in your packet.
JC hit on it, but there's a couple of different reasons for the replacement sheet. If you were to go back and compare, the cemetery board voted to make some adjustments to their fees, which will be coming back to you all for your next meeting to approve by ordinance, which will change some of the grave openings, the grave spaces. And so this budget reflects the new fees and with new revenues. So back up at the top again, you'll see in the budget 2022 total column, you'll see the cash balances. Again, just like every other fund, back when we kind of separated some things out and after we cashed CDs, we left a certain dollar amount in there. At the time, we were looking at 3 months operating. The rest of that we took and we put into a money market account just so it would yield a higher interest rate. So after expenditures this year, the cemetery fund is looking at $471,976. The revenue on this one's pretty self-explanatory. Be happy to hit on anything that you might want me to stop and talk about, but as I said, it does reflect the new fees based off of Did you figure those based off of this year, of this last year?
This is the current year, the year to date. I just went and looked at how many lots were sold, how many grave openings, and then,
And it wasn't maxed out.
yeah, I didn't do the exact amount. I
Right.
calculated at the top and then made a more conservative increase on the revenues.
Okay.
So any questions on the revenues on the cemetery side? Okay. So if you look at, if you drop on down into the expenditures, again, we've talked about this a little bit. We have one full-time cemetery employee that's 100% over there. This does include the 3.7% COLA in there, but this also includes an allocation of multiple employees, including myself and Monica and Karen, and a few other small allocations. This also includes the 11.9% health insurance increase that we received. Any questions on the wages portion of that? There's really not a lot of changes on this entire budget, except for I will tell you that on the, as JC was talking about, there was a discussion in the past, just like our street department and a couple other small departments and in the parks department. We came to utilize that inmate program very, very heavily in those departments. The cemetery is another place where that hit. And so when we couldn't get them, and we still can't get them until they get to a certain percentage of the population over there has been vaccinated, it puts us in a little bit of an issue trying to maintain the cemetery. As you can imagine, Sean's busy time over there is everybody else's busy time. And so we've been very project driven. And so it's very hard to peel other manpower, other full-time manpower to go over there and help trim and mow. This year, we were able to put on a part-time person for part of the summer. And it did help, but it obviously wasn't enough. And so we still supplemented that with some of our crews, and Sean put in some very long days and long hours. And so in his whole budget, the only thing that he asked for was more help. His equipment's in good shape, his pickup's in good shape. You will see an increase in the equipment line or in the truck expense line. He's running an 80s model dump truck over there, which actually works out well because it's lighter, because it has a gas motor in it, but it does have some issues, as you would expect from an 80s model dump truck. It's actually back in the shop right now, so that $4,000 number won't catch the estimated actual. But we had, one of the differences I will point out from the budget from the other night until from earlier this week until tonight was that we had the $10,000 coming out of cash, which I didn't like. And so during the discussion, I explained to the cemetery board that it's pretty standard practice for us not to use ongoing expenses to use cash on those. And so through that discussion, we were able to come up with another option to put that back in the operating budget and to select a large ticket item out of their budget to pay cash for, which in this case, if you scroll on down, is the professional services, which is the contribution to grow. So during that meeting, it looked like we were just going to swap the 10,000 for 10,000, but after the rate adjustment figured in that from what they voted on, we were able to, basically that transfer comes down to, or the cash expenditure for that comes down to the $3,741 to be paid for to grow out of cash. Outside of that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or go through anything that you want to, but that is really the two biggest changes from the cemetery board, or to the cemetery budget. The cemetery board has already looked at this. They voted to recommend approval for it. We're not asking for your approval again tonight, but we'd be happy to answer any questions or make any changes you guys see too.
We'll open the floor. Alderman Lee,
No, I'm good.
Alderman Cunningham,
No.
Alderman Boggs,
I'm good.
Alderman Quinn.
Same here. No questions.
That will lead us into alternative revenues.
So Alderman Quinn had asked about alternative revenues, and we've talked about this a little bit in our work session. I printed off, and tonight's just a discussion, but I printed off a bunch of stuff that we got from MML, talking about Wayfair, basically online internet sales. Monica's done a lot of research on this as well. And I will tell you, before I turn it over to her, one thing for you to keep in mind is obviously it has to go to a ballot question. So you'll see another sheet like this. I just wanted to provide this if you guys choose to. So they put this ballot calendar out. And so I asked Karen to put this together and provide it tonight. Just so you guys know, if you guys decide to put something on the ballot, there are deadlines obviously to get it on certain ballots and where that lies. So I just wanted you guys to have that. I'm gonna hang one up in my office, but I did want you guys to see that. Monica has ran some numbers, and we do have some, we did have some conversations with Stuart Haynes from MML. And so do you wanna run over what we found from Stuart and what those projections would be?
Sure. Well, the state of Missouri already has the use tax, and so they're already collecting the use tax or the internet sales or and so in order for us to collect the use tax, obviously it has to be on the ballot. But the state of Missouri, the Department of Revenue, has numbers on their website as far as what's being reported to them. So what would be eligible for use tax. And that's what I have here is a rough calculation. I don't think it comes up exactly the same as far as when they receive it as to when they remit it to the city, but it'll be close enough for this. So the use tax, well, let me back up. The use tax is going to, if it was on the ballot, it would be the same amount as what our sales tax is. And you either collect sales tax or use tax, it's not both. And so because we have a 1% general sales tax, a 0.5% transportation sales tax, and a 0.5% local parks and stormwater sales tax, or a 2% sales tax, the use tax would be 2%. If we added another sales tax or we repealed another one of those sales tax, that use tax would automatically go up or down based on whatever we had. And the use tax is general. So it can all go into the general fund. At that point, we can decide where we want to use it. So the calculations, on a 2% use tax, you can see going from 2017 to 2020. Well, 2020 is a significant increase from $36,373 up to $98,000. Of course, we only have the first quarter for 2021. So I did not understand use tax until I talked to Stuart, but because it's the full 2%, these other two columns are irrelevant. I didn't realize it had to be the full 2% and not the 0.5% or anything else. So really that far 2% column is what we're looking at. If you had a use tax on the ballot, what we could possibly receive each year.
And what I found was interesting, we have the 1% general sales tax that is the general fund, but then the other 2.5% between the transportation and the parks. I really kind of assumed that they would be restricted as well on this, but they're not. I mean, it all goes to general. You can choose to internally split it up, but it doesn't have to.
But realistically, we're looking at taking 2020 as an anomaly year, right? $50,000 to $75,000.
Yep.
That's it out of Floyd there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
And what Stuart was saying is that the communities that have been able to successfully get this on the ballot and passed. It's really about education, making sure that your consumers or your taxpayers know it's not a new tax. It's really, get your local businesses involved in that process.
And some of the communities that have it and that have been successful at it have really put on quite the campaign. Obviously, the city can just pose the question. We can't support it or not support it, but we can pose the question. But there are certain ways that you can pose that question, certain things that you can do. And so some of the cities that have been very successful about it have really went through the extent and through the process to do a very good job of education. So something for you to think about.
So you're saying the estimated revenue from this would be around 75,000?
I think that would be
50
on
to
the high
75?
side. I
50 to
think
75, yeah. And these are just guesses.
yeah.
Right.
I would hate to bank on anything more than 50, 60 based off of what we see.
Open the floor for any questions on the Wayfair tax. Alderman Cunningham?
No.
Alderman Boggs?
No.
Alderman Quinn?
No.
Alderman Lee?
No.
Okay. Public safety dedicated sales tax. Do you want to talk about what you have on that?
I mean, yeah, Monica, you go ahead.
Sure. So I went looking for the statutes for law enforcement sales tax or public safety. And I couldn't find very many cities that had that. And so I reached out to some cities as well as to Stuart Haynes from MML. And you have to have go through the legislation to allow the city to specifically have a law enforcement sales tax. However, you can go up to, we have a 1% general sales tax. So we have the ability to go out for just a general sales tax and then have it specified internally for that law enforcement or the public safety. It wouldn't be on the ballot under that statute.
The term law enforcement sales tax is actually a county law. And that's where this particular type of funding mechanism came up, was in counties years ago. There were several cities who specifically contacted their legislators and had laws passed so that they could do it too. But literally, it is city specific. The cities that fund their law enforcement, their public safety, using additional sales tax or dedicated sales tax fund, just exactly what Monica's talking about. It's an additional general revenue sales tax that is dedicated. And you do that through your ballot language, which it looks like you found Joplin's.
Yeah, Joplin has done that a few years
And so
ago.
if you notice this, whereas the very end of it says for the purpose of improving public safety.
Makes it restricted funds.
Huh?
Which makes it restricted funds.
It makes it a dedicated
Right.
sales tax.
So I just had Monica put a few numbers together. I mean, it's all in the budget, but that way you could see, if you wanted to do something, just a comparison between a 1 cent all the way down to an 8 cent, what that impact would look like.
So to fund our law enforcement currently, and please remember, we have room to grow in this area as well as we do with everything else, but the 1% wouldn't cover it. So this isn't the only way we are going to fund the department. It is an additional way to fund that department and to help that department grow and lessen the draw on other monies so that other things can grow too. As a general rule, it doesn't require as much education, but it is a tax increase. This is a tax increase. Wayfair is not a tax increase,
It is not.
but it's also gonna get you maybe $50,000. This would definitely put the money in the bucket and it'll put it where we need it. But it is a tax increase.
And obviously, you don't want to be too aggressive all the time, but that Wayfair tax is something that we will want to hit.
We want to do it at some
We want to
point.
do it at some point, just because for our local vendors, you know, it
Absolutely.
really, and it's kind of an industry standard term, but it levels the playing field for them. I mean, it really does.
For our
I
local
gave you-
businesses.
I gave you the example of they could price it out. They could price something here in town, or they can order it online. Right
Mhm.
now, if they order it online, they're not paying the full sales tax. So it really does. The business owners around should really support Wayfair.
Is there any reason not to put something like that on there and just let the businesses rally if they will?
There would probably be some groundwork that should be done first to make sure we have their support and that we educate them first. And I'm sure, I see Dwayne shaking his head, so I'm sure he's either already talked to them or planted the seeds or could help us with that process for sure.
And I think you're gonna see online purchases. is going to
Continue.
increase. It's
Yeah.
going to be increased, so whatever that number is probably gonna be a baseline number at this point.
Yeah.
So
If I just
the more we put it off, the more
delivered to the house.
letting, the more we're hurting our local businesses, so. I think, you know, when we talk to are definitely interested in like, the level playing field, they can support it. There's always gonna be people out there who are gonna think it's been an increase in tax and, you know, we'll just have to overcome that.
Right. It is important to consider that we do not stack a ballot. So that means the more you put on a ballot, the more no's you're gonna get, right? That's just working through the psychology of voting, right? The more that you have to make decisions on, eventually you're gonna start saying no.
And the other thing to consider too is that the county doesn't have the Wayfair either. And so do you do it at the same time? Do you not?
And so I talked to Stan
Yeah.
about that, and they would be interested in talking about it for sure. But again, there's some education in that because people are going to think, well, now both of them are increasing.
Yeah.
But if you don't do them like that, the other option is they're going to go, well, I already passed that.
Yeah.
So it's the education factor that is so difficult when it comes to taxes, because it's something we don't like, so we don't like to learn about it either.
I don't know if this answers your question, John, but I don't think it's one of those questions you just throw out there and pose to the voters. I think that you educate before you do that, just so that they have all the information, so they understand 100% what they're voting for.
Well, and
Or
I'm just
against.
saying, is there any reason to wait as far as getting the process going, and what does that look like as far as the process? Is that something where we say, hey, Dwayne, how long to kick this ball down?
Dwayne and the Chamber of Commerce and the county, I think would all be really good partners to,
Of course, and the county's got a lot more population than just Marshfield, so there's got a lot more purchasers out there. So, I mean, you'll see some significant numbers on the county side.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to put it off, John, okay? But you do want to take the steps. Sam's right. We got to educate the folks out there, and we got to get the message that they understand exactly why we're doing this. And then, and they're gonna know it's not a tax increase, and we're helping them.
We're just kind of wondering what step one, what step two, what step three, that's what I'm kind of, yeah.
I think step one is deciding whether or not you want to do it and when you want to try to implement it, and then we build a timeline off of that. I mean, that would bring in the education and who is going to educate.
absolutely.
What that looks like.
But I do want to point out the stacking, because if we move forward on this and then you don't take a breath,
Yeah.
you're gonna cause defeat on the second issue we come in with. So we also need to weigh which issue is it that's going to help us the most, and what do we want to go for?
I agree wholeheartedly.
What do you guys think?
I think also if there is something else we are gonna put on, we do need to make sure we're getting the most bang for the buck, because I would agree if there's too many things on, I just
Don't know.
Eventually, I.
Yeah.
I do too.
They're kind of from the psychological end, my take on this would be Wayfair would be a harder sell for people that don't know the ins and outs of it. But something like a law enforcement tax would be easier to rally people behind.
I agree
So
with you.
if I was gonna put one in order, I would probably go with something like that versus Wayfair, and then let the groundwork get laid for the other later on down the road, if that's.
No, I don't disagree with you. I think we have more support on a public safety,
Yeah.
a dedicated public safety.
Cities will carry fire. City carried fire on both of them. County.
Okay.
The city did, they were very strong unanimous pretty much on that support, so.
Awesome. I will run through the board just in case anybody else needs to speak. Alderman Boggs. Alderman Quinn.
I'm good.
Alderman Lee.
I'm good.
Alderman Cunningham. Okay. There is also a cost for every time we put something on a ballot, but we never know what the cost is because it gets divided between however many other people put things on the ballot. So I can't give you a magic number, like it's gonna cost us $10,000. No, can't do that. It could be that we divide the cost so many different ways, it costs us $1,000. It's no big deal, right? But there is cost involved. All right. With nothing else on that, I do notice that we don't have future agenda items again on here. Let's go ahead and cover that before we go into closed session. So we have tabled the grow contract. And we will put the wage survey results with a calculation of midpoint. And I'll also
Get a
try.
couple, can we get midpoint and in between midpoint and, you know what I mean, just because.
Like a low to mid.
Yeah, I mean, I know what Stacy's after, I'm just wondering, like, you know, as we. Some
Multiple.
of those
Baby
numbers
steps.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I will also work with Sam and Monica to make sure, and Karen as well, to make sure that I actually identify employees we have and not just employees that I've broken up to give us additional options to limit that ceiling. So regardless of what we're gonna call them, I'll make sure I get that calculation right. Anything else that I need to carry forward on this?
Well, possibly the anti-discrimination versus mandated vaccines, trying to put an ordinance, but I haven't had a chance to talk with Sam and get that coordinated yet, so that may be.
Okay, so that's something you're gonna communicate with Sam, and because it was on our last list, so if it needs to come back up, it can come up from it. Absolutely.
Something else, wasn't it?
So, probably just probably not, maybe on a future agenda item, maybe a statement or something for you guys to consider. We do have a long span between now and the next meeting. And so unless I hear any.
Not on my schedule.
Well, the next regularly scheduled board meeting. So unless I hear any disagreement, we will keep the bills paid current. Because you guys won't be meeting in regular session to approve the bill. So just kind of a disclaimer there. It's like that every year, but wanted to throw that out there.
Do you see anything else?
Couldn't think of anything else.
Okay, okay. All right, with that, I will take a motion to go into closed session pursuant section 61021 subsection 2 regarding leasing, purchase, and sale of real estate. So moved. Roll call, please. Lynn?
Aye.
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And then?
Aye.
All right. You want to shut down the recording?
Yep.
Used almost a whole sheet.
Oh, you forgot to put
Maybe.
little sheet.
Where is it?
Oh, I totally forgot to put puddles.
Why can't?
This
That was
is
pretty
fine.
cute. They looked like they'd be fun.
Uh-huh.